Get started. So we are the Long Island Organics Council. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll be discussing today's theme of cleaning up Long Island's beaches with Joe Labriola. Yep. Today's agenda includes our welcome remarks and introduction, a spotlight on the beach cleanup, a Q&A session, updates, member updates, and our closing remarks and next steps.
Francesca, your screen just isn't showing.
Oh, no?
No, I don't think so. Are you seeing it? Oh, wait, now I see it. Never mind.
Okay, just checking. Okay, good. Maybe it's a little delayed.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. So please introduce yourself in the chat, a little bit more about you, your location, anything you'd like to share about your interests in organics, or some successes and challenges.
Hi, I'm Margaret. I love to see a clean beach. Love to utilize mostly organic products. My family, retired.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So a little bit more about us at LIAC. So we have up here on the left-hand side is Judy, our founder, and I'm Francesca Greco. On the lower left corner here, we have our project coordinator, Madeline Infantino, and Rebecca, who is here, our marketing and events coordinator. And we are LIOC's leading organization for sustainable food scraps diversion, connecting municipalities, communities, and institutions to develop impactful organic solutions. All right.
Great. So, a little bit about LIOC. I would love to introduce Joe Labriola. He is a professor of writing at Stony Brook University, and he also serves as the Environmental Club's faculty advisor. So he writes fiction and nonfiction and focuses on issues relating to nature, the environment, and is an avid beach cleaner. I know Joe from outside of Stony Brook also, and he's always been very passionate, and I've always enjoyed hearing him talk about the things that he finds or where he's been and all the stories that he has. So when he's not writing, he's often found on the beaches, scouring up local beach litter and then swimming. And he's a big sustainability advocate. He hosts regular cleanup events, lectures, and he has done a TED Talk also. So, Joe, if you want to share your screen, you can go ahead.
Awesome. First of all, thank you so much, Rebecca, Francesca, Judy, for organizing all of this and for having me. It's really exciting to be here and be here with other locals who are interested in this kind of work that I do, and of course, how this all connects. I think that's something that I'm really interested to talk a little bit more about, because that is something that I talk a lot about and write about for different reasons and in different ways. So, I teach writing and rhetoric at Stony Brook University, as mentioned. And I guess to start, I wanted to begin with, ironically, interestingly, a statistic instead, because I think sometimes putting all of this into context with small numbers and big numbers can be a really interesting way to think about how everything is connected. So I actually went down to my beaches, local beaches, I often do. All of us who are from Long Island, we know you can just walk down to your local beach, sometimes pretty easily, but you can unfortunately find lots of trash. And so one of the things I found, which is the most commonly littered item globally now, is a cigarette butt. You can kind of see it here, right? It's pretty familiar, that kind of yellowish with the white inside. And a lot of people don't know that this is actually usually mostly plastic now. A lot of cigarette filters, I think the majority of them really are plastic pieces now. So it is the most littered item by number in the world today. And so I wanted to start by just asking, as of this year, if you added up all the cigarette butts that will be littered worldwide and you line them up in a row, how many miles do you think that would add up to? And you could just write in the chat on the side here. Do you think it would be 100 miles? Do you think it would be 1,000 miles? Do you think it would add up 5,000 miles? How many miles do you think, if we collected all the cigarette butts that will be littered worldwide this year, how many miles would that add up to? So yeah, if you have any guesses, I'm really curious, because it was a number I had to look into to figure out myself. So we have 1 million miles. Oh, now I got to add the digits. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. 10,000 miles, 200,000 miles. Okay, and that seems like a lot, right? That's pretty far trek, that amount of miles, right? All right, those are good guesses. So yeah, I did the math on it, and there's actually going to be 4.5 trillion cigarette butts littered worldwide this year. And each cigarette butt is about an inch long. So if you line that up end to end, it would actually add up to about 71 million miles. And that's enough to go to the moon and back. So that's round trip to the moon and back about 150 times. And if you want to stay home, if you don't want to go all the way to the moon, you can just go around the Earth at the equator, and that would be just about 3,000 times around the Earth, which sounds pretty insane. But when you think about adding up all of those individual butts, the math adds up. And so sort of the point of a statistic like that is to think about how each one of those butts, though, is an individual decision, right? It's kind of like a lot of other issues. It's like the one person who flicks it, not thinking about it, doesn't really think of them as contributing to that larger problem because it seems so insignificant. But it's all those sort of feelings of insignificance that do add up to something significant. So I think there's just countless examples like that I've seen over the years, and I think it's really illuminating to think how, yes, that does connect between our own individual choices, our habits and behaviors, and sort of these collective situations and problems that we do find ourselves in, right? And so sort of building upon that, I want to obviously talk about, well, how do we do more about that, right? Like, how do we do more to sort of address a lot of that and deal with that in different ways? And there's a lot of different ways to sort of consider this and sort of thinking about it. But the, of course, premise that I always come back to is that of course, beach cleaning. And as you see here, I have a picture of actually one of our local beaches. And alas, lo and behold, it's quite plasticky, as you can see. And again, it's similar to the example that I was just using with the cigarette butts. You can see all sorts of wrappers, scraps that have added up, mixed in with these tide lines. And it creates this sort of just mixture concoction of all this plastic waste that adds up to in these marine environments. So that, of course, like I said, it raises the question, well, what can we do, and how can beach cleaning efforts, these types of sustainability efforts, do something in part with maybe some other actions, some other changes in habits to help mitigate some of these problems and deal with some of these issues that, again, are becoming seemingly worse and worse in many ways. So it's a good question. Why beach clean? What can it do? What can it help? And how can you sort of be a part of that? I think is a really interesting consideration. And so I actually have here a picture on the side of a beach glass collection I did. And that picture, I believe, was from last summer in Montauk. All of these pictures I have are local beaches. And Montauk is a beautiful environment, obviously. Unfortunately, I've done a lot of beach cleans there, too. A lot of times you find a beautiful stretch of beach, but if you just go around the corner, you'll see lots of trash and stuff that's just around the bend. But I sort of got into beach cleaning just by loving the beach, pretty much. I mean, that was sort of my original connection to the beach. I talked about that in my TED Talk, how when I was a kid and I moved to New York, one of the pure nature connections that I really felt with where I had come from in Florida was going to the beach, because it was relatively a very similar feeling compared to everything else environmentally. And so I think it's this really universal connective place, and it has this really universal connective meaning in a lot of ways to a lot of people. And that was definitely my experience. So I've always had this connection, like I said, to the beach, and I've always loved it for those reasons. As Rebecca said at the beginning, a lot of what I do is self-serving in the sense that, like, I want to swim at the beach. I love enjoying it. So it's in my interest to try to clean it as much as I can. And one of the first things that I did notice before I really got into beach cleaning was this, cleaning up sea glass, which is a whole other topic in terms of sea glass as basically these bits of broken glass that over time get worn down and smoothed, and you can see they're quite beautiful. So it's technically in some ways a form of ocean pollution, albeit not as sort of ubiquitous or detrimental as we think of like some other modern plastic pollutions that we're seeing in mass in different ways. So this was very much just a habit of finding beach glass, finding it beautiful, and wanting to sort of collect more. But as is often the case with people I know who get involved with beach cleaning, they start to see other items, right? You don't just see the beautiful beach glass, you start to see the refuse, you start to see the scraps like in the previous picture, you start to see different types of just debris, old and new. And it's almost kind of a self-fulfilling, self-spreading prophecy. It's like the more you see, the more you continue to see in different ways, which at first can feel a little daunting, but at the same time, it makes you realize that, hey, this is sort of an issue bigger than you initially suspected, and there's probably a lot more that you maybe can do, maybe that you even should do. And that was sort of the next thing that I noticed, like something was wrong here in terms of the fact that, yeah, this was a much bigger problem than even just thinking that what I was finding at my local beach was garbage left by people. The more you start to beach clean, the more you start to see the interconnectedness of how a lot of this trash is ending up on the beach. And it's really a sort of comprehensive palette of behaviors and systems at play. So there's obviously people leaving litter on the beach, but there's also a lot of plastic waste, and it's hard to research. Different research shows different things, but it seems pretty clear that a lot of the ocean plastic pollution that we're finding is coming from at the beach, but is also washing down to the beach, which kind of makes sense if you think about the beach and the ocean as the lowest place on planet Earth, right? Things are going to, over time, and if you think about plastics, which are in no hurry to degrade, they're going to take their time getting down to the ocean. And that's been my experience doing cleanups in other environments, whether further inland on rivers or estuaries near the ocean. You see how all of this is connected, and how, yeah, you could have trash and debris somewhere on the Hudson River upstate. Well, where's the Hudson River going eventually, right? It's going out into the ocean. So there's a lot of interconnectedness with like waste management systems and just different types of debris management and that sort of stuff that, again, kind of connects all of this. And so, again, this all sort of leads to wanting to do something more about it. And, of course, the question is, well, how and what can you actually do about it? And so this is another picture I took from a local beach. I think this was Cedar Beach in Mount Sinai, and this is a giant pile of cigarette butts that I picked up. I think this might have been, I was trying to see how many cigarette butts I could pick up in just an hour, and I think this was like 500 of them or something. It's quite a big pile in the back, which, again, that adds up, again, as per the $4.5 trillion number. So, yeah, sadly, it's not difficult to find, but it's important to highlight for those reasons. So that's something else I want to sort of show you and mention. So that's a good question. Why does it matter, right? I think the first part that you can sort of identify is this idea of individual efforts. So it's something that everybody can do, and that's been my experience with hosting beach cleanups, organizing them. There's a sort of sense of empowerment almost, where people realize, hey, there's a problem going on. There's something that I can do to help deal with it, to help mitigate it in some way. And so I've seen all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. I mean, I've organized beach cleans with Girl Scouts. I've organized it with other, groups and businesses even. I've had young people, old people come out to beach cleans, people of different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, political affiliations, really the full spread. So I think it, again, is something that can, especially in our modern times, try to bring people together with realizing something that we have in common that we want to do more to help protect in different ways, which, again, is not maybe necessarily the one answer, but it's a good step in maybe a better direction. And something else in terms of thinking about individual efforts, I think it's this idea of improving local environments is really useful to think about. So this idea that, yeah, you can really help to improve your backyard, so to say, right? By sort of helping to clean your local environments, it does actually improve the quality of life for individuals within those environments. And in a case like beach cleaning, I think of the animals, the creatures who live in those environments. It can really make a difference. And again, that idea of making a difference for individuals, I think, is a really important one. I always use the example because a lot of people looking at an issue like this, they kind of ask, or they think sometimes, well, it's such a big problem. What is the difference in just cleaning up a beach? That's not going to solve the issue, right? If I go clean my beach today, there's going to be more trash tomorrow. And the example I give is that of if you said that to somebody who worked at, say, a soup kitchen or something like that, right? You would kind of seem like a jerk if you told that person, well, why bother working at the soup kitchen? People are just going to be hungry again tomorrow, right? And you would obviously say, well, yes, there's obviously a larger scale issue that is a problem here that we maybe need to work to address and do better with. But to those individuals who you're helping in that moment, it does in fact make an important difference and an important impact. So when you think about, again, and I've seen this, I was just speaking before the meeting, how I find animals that have died that are tangled up in different types of plastic. So it does have an impact. And if you think particularly about animals, there are a lot of vulnerable bird populations and stuff. It can make a big difference to different nesting habitats, even of different types of creatures. So I think it's indeed like really relevant and meaningful in that way. And of course, there's also the aspect of collective efforts, and that's sort of moving towards longer term and larger scale, what we need to do more of and what we need to do better at. And I like this phrase, get others involved and monkey see, monkey clean. That's something that I've noticed, particularly I've been beach cleaning now for almost 10 years, probably pretty regularly. And when I started 10 years ago, it was still a relatively fringe-ish thing. It wasn't something that was as normalized as I feel like it is today, which is awesome to see. And I'll show you some other examples of that in a moment. But I really do feel that way, that the more people who see it, the more people who think that it's abnormal for our beaches and our environments to be so trashed in these ways, it just gets others involved, whether cleaning the beach themselves or thinking in different ways about how and why this issue exists, which is super important. And that's why I say as well, this idea of pointing out or prompting the need for larger systematic changes is really important, right? Obviously, again, as I mentioned before, me just going to the beach and cleaning it isn't going to solve the larger issue, but there's a lot more people who can get involved in a lot of different ways. And this is something I've seen with my work with the Stony Brook University Environmental Club. There's so many students in environmental studies, sustainability studies, marine sciences, who are doing all sorts of interesting work and products in different ways. And I think that's important to keep in mind. No one individual is going to have the answer or the solution. But again, collectively, if you get enough individuals involved doing enough interesting things, enough important things, that's sort of, if you think about changes and progresses throughout the course of human history, that's how it happens. You sometimes have individuals who do make big changes, but there's usually a movement behind it of a lot more people involved and a lot more people involved over time. So I think that's important to note as well. And along those lines, that's something that I like to say as well. You know, your efforts can lead to unforeseen initiatives and collaborations. And that's something that I've had some experience with. And if I can have experiences with it, I think people who are doing other things, who knows what the possibilities are. So I'll show you an example of exactly that now. And this was, I think, a particularly interesting one, just to demonstrate how you can never really expect what changes or progress might come up. And as you can see here, this might be confusing if you've never seen it before, a giant pile of tennis balls on the beach. Like, well, what the heck is that doing on the beach, right? And that all started because as I was doing beach cleaning, this was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I started finding tennis balls. And I did a video on YouTube where I collected, I think, 25 tennis balls. And then once I started looking for them again, it's not just trash in general, it's specific types of trash. I found 100 and I posted the video. I think somebody shared it on Reddit, and somebody from Wilson Sporting Goods saw it on Reddit, and Wilson Sporting Goods emailed me and they said, oh, we actually have a recycling program to reclaim these tennis balls that we repurpose in different ways. And I said, that's really interesting. And they said, yeah, would you want some of our recycle bins? And you can maybe do a video about that. And I said, sure. They said, do you think you can get 1,000 tennis balls? And I said, let's find out. So I was able to, I think it took 2 or 3 beach cleans, but with some other local volunteers, we collected 1,000 tennis balls. And that was a really interesting experience because it showed how, again, just an initial identification of a few of these tennis balls can lead to a much larger awareness where are these coming from? Like, why is this an issue? What more could be done about them? And it was something talking to local, I remember I was talking to one of the local town village gardeners, and she was saying that, like, yeah, this is actually becoming an issue where some areas along the shoreline were so inundated with these tennis balls, it was degrading the dune growth of biomass along the dunes, and they were eroding more. who would think that tennis balls could cause that, right? But again, it's the one person hitting the tennis ball and saying, it's all the way over there. I'm not going to go all the way over there to get it. My dog didn't pick it up. Just leave it there, right? That happens one at a time, like the cigarette butts, but that obviously adds up. And again, to the Wilson Sporting Goods example, I think, again, it was just an interesting experience because I had no idea that a program like this existed. And even then, I don't know if that's the end all be all for maybe they need to make them with more sustainable materials as well. But the fact that they're doing something and they're raising awareness, I think, is still an important step. So that was certainly really good to see. And again, we collected over 1,000 tennis balls. And like I said, there's lots of other organizations doing work in lots of ways, and probably in interesting ways like this that I'm not even aware of. And this is why, like I said, the potential for collaboration is really compelling to me, because the more people are involved, the more unique perspectives, experience, resources they can sort of bring to the table in those ways. So just along those lines, I have a couple of items to show you that I think can sort of help illustrate. And I didn't get too much because I can start to go down the rabbit hole, and then this becomes like just hours-long presentation of here's all the different types of trash. But my point being, as I'm sure any of you who have gone to the beach and found trash, there's unfortunately, it's very easy to do, right? And so a couple of things that I decided to get thinking about, reading about the Long Island Organics Council and sort of some of the work that you do, I thought it was really interesting, again, like I said, how it ties into that type of work and what more maybe people could do in different ways. So obviously, the cigarette butts, you can find those pretty much anywhere, unfortunately. But, some other things I saw that were really interesting were things like this. So just like plastic cups, disposable cups, which, again, a lot of these, I think they are left on the beach. And what's interesting about these is that some of them are recyclable, some of them not so much. But in thinking about alternatives, that is something that I've seen more and more. And again, I think it's a really good example of maybe different directions we can move in with compostables in different ways. So that's something that you see more and more of. I feel like compostable cups, those sorts of things, and how those could maybe be used as kind of a benefit as opposed to just, again, something like this, which is manufactured in mass, it's thrown out, and then it's going to take hundreds, if not thousands of years to fully degrade and kind of just, be lying around being useless and toxic over time. So I don't know the answer to that, but I know by people sort of being aware that, hey, maybe there are alternatives out there, and maybe there's more research into what we can do to do things like that with compostables in different ways. I think that's really useful to consider. Somebody mentioned to me the other day, I feel like they said we need to make straws that don't last 1,000 years, but also don't last 4 seconds. And I was like, that's actually a really good point. And maybe, again, there's research that can continually be done to try to find that medium where it's like, this is something that could be thought of in a slightly different way where there is a better medium. Another thing that I often find are bags in different ways. And this is a bag, actually, you can't really see it, but it's a compostable bag. So you see more and more of these too. Compostable bags in different ways, and you have to sort of do your research on those because I'm not as familiar with those, and I've heard people have very different opinions on them in terms of how compostable they actually are. So it's an interesting developing topic, I feel like, in the environmental community, and I'm definitely very curious to learn more about that and learn more about what people are trying to do with those types of compostables, because I feel like it is potentially a really good alternative, something that we could use at the moment, but then do something more with. And that's something that I think sort of habitually we kind of want to move more towards. So there's different ways to do that. Of course, you could, I have my own bags that are just reusable or reusable pails or something like that, as opposed to plastic bags. But if we do use these different types of bags, well, again, could we manufacture something that is more organic in the sense of compostable or something like that? It has a secondary use in some way. Again, I think ultimately that's where we're going to need to head. So the sooner we can sort of normalize that a little bit more in mass, I think that's always better as well. And, I found lots of other things like these types of wrappers. It's not really showing up, but I just thought this was funny because it's an organic like snack wrapper in a certain way. And it's like, well, why is the snack allegedly organic, but the wrapper is totally the opposite, right? Again, I don't know the answer to these types of packaging issues, but that's something that I think by bringing awareness to them and people being more aware that, yeah, these single uses are sort of outliving their purposefulness in terms of just sitting in these environments degrading for many, many years, sometimes, again, decades or hundreds of years to come. It's a good way to sort of think about, well, should we be doing something a little bit different? Could we sort of push for companies or organizations to be doing something different in terms of some of these single-use plastics in different ways? So yeah, lots of different things like that, wrappers and those sorts of things as well. Pretty ubiquitous still. And there has been a lot of progress with some of this. The plastic bags, for example, there's been a lot of work with that to reduce those as single-use items. So there are possibilities, whether just reducing our usage and consumption of them and or finding alternatives to them and doing it at mass levels. So there's a lot of complex components involved, both from individual habits to legislation is huge and key. You sort of need, I think, all of these components working together, demanding or holding companies accountable in different ways. It's not going to happen with one set thing. You kind of need a comprehensive approach societally. And in some ways that has happened. It's good to see that as a proof of concept that we have done that in different ways. But obviously, again, we need to be doing more of it in those ways for those reasons. Another thing that I couldn't find, but I often do find that I wanted to mention was actual food waste, food scrap waste. So that's something that's very odd because I've seen everywhere, everything from orange peels on the beach to banana peels to coconuts to pineapples. Basically name the food. I called it the Kentucky Fried Chicken Massacre once, where somebody had a Kentucky Fried Chicken party and I don't know what went wrong, but it was a mess. So there's a lot of food left on the beach that probably doesn't belong there as well. And that's actually a really good consideration too, because I've seen a little bit of research about that, how sometimes different types of produce can actually be really toxic for certain environments that they're not native to. And this raises a whole other issue with like landfill usage and that sort of thing, which I'm not even going to get into because that's a whole other thing that's really important to talk about and get into. But it's very complex and sort of has a lot of components as well. But the point being that that's actually stuff that is worth being aware of too, that if you bring it home and you can compost it in certain ways, it again can actually be used to a certain benefit instead potentially as well. So something that I've never really thought. I always just thought, oh, you have like a fruit or something, throw it in the beach. Maybe it's natural. I shouldn't say that I'm going to the beach throwing fruit around, but it would I wouldn't have thought twice of it in the past before I started doing beach cleaning. But again, you read what people are doing and researching about it as you get more into it, and you find like, oh, that's maybe not something that we should be doing, or we should be thinking about how we could do differently. So that's another thing that I found as really interesting with what more could be done or what should be done differently. And so again, along those lines, just to kind of sort of wrap up with that. So this is another beach picture, local beach. I think this was right in Port Jefferson where I am. And that water looks pretty good. And that's probably because I was doing some cleaning up of it, as you can see in that basket, which is nice. It means that we're ready to swim, which is what we want, right? And this basket, actually, you see it says Relic, Protect Our Ocean. They are actually I don't know how to describe them other than an environmental clothing line. And they're a company out east on Long Island, and they're called Relic Sustainability. And they do all these, they're an apparel company, basically. And they're all Long Islanders. They started the company because they love the beach and the beach theme, but they wanted to do a lot of work with the ocean. So I think they do things like every dollar sale, they plant like one oyster. So they plant a lot of oysters every year. And they set up these beach clean baskets all around Long Island. I think they're up to like 100 baskets almost or something. So if you notice, if you go to a beach on Long Island now, you'll see their stands. And that's really cool to see because I remember meeting them when they just had a few and they thought, hey, this would be a cool idea. And now I don't know the exact numbers, but I would imagine that many thousands of pounds of plastic waste have been taken out of the oceans through this type of effort and initiative, which is really cool. So I just think that's so awesome to see what new opportunities are being explored out there. Again, it's individuals, it's organizations, it's also businesses can do certain things. Like I think of them as a great example of a local business that's doing something that's a win-win for them as well as their local environment, where they live and how they love where they live. And talking to them, that's exactly their ethos, which is really cool. And of course, there's lots of other things you can do as you get involved. I mean, obviously, I've done a lot of writing, a lot of reflective writing, a lot of advocacy writing, but I've also done art exhibits, like literally making exhibits out of trash. I did one, I think it was not last year, it was the year before, where we made a giant wave out of plastic garbage that we found on the beach. It was like a 12-foot high wave. So there's a ton of things that people are doing to help highlight exactly what this issue looks like in different ways. So there's really no shortage of interesting, innovative ways for you to get involved based upon your own interest, whether it's business, art, writing, or otherwise. And again, like I said, look to others for collaborations, both at the individual level as well as groups. Again, it could be as simple as you going out with your friends or family. I see people all the time, just family members going out and doing things, because it does make them feel good to know, again, they're helping at that individual level and help normalizing this type of activity. And like I said, keep in mind, you can't solve everything. That's one thing that I often tell people when they first get involved. I call it sometimes cleaner's anxiety, where you start to clean and then you go back to the beach the next day and there's more trash and you say, oh my goodness, what happened? What was the purpose? You have this existential crisis. Calm down. You don't have to have an existential crisis. It helps. It does make a difference. Again, you're not going to solve everything, but you are working towards that change, right? Again, I come back to that cigarette butt, that single cigarette butt. Each one does add up to that whole problem, right? And of course, come out to our beach cleanup. We're going to be hosting that, I believe, this coming Sunday, and it should be a good time. I'll give you guys a lot more tips, a lot more advice, and I'll show you some really weird stuff that you can find on the beach. Basically, I tell people, if you can think of it, I've probably found it on the beach. Maybe not everything. There's a few things on my list I'm still looking for on my bingo card of weird, bizarre beach trash, but mostly everything. So it's always interesting to see what more you find. But again, we're gonna, I think, have a lot of fun with that. So I definitely hope to see some of you there. And thank you for listening to me about what this all is about and what more you can do.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was really insightful. I'm going to just pull up our screen here and we'll take away our Q&A discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You were right. That statistic was very shocking right at the beginning with all the cigarette butts. I was not expecting it to be, would you say 71 million miles? I said 10,000.
Yeah, I think I checked the math, and anybody who's better at math than me, again, I'm not a math professor, can double check, but I ran it every way I could imagine because it's so shocking. I'm like, how is this possible, right? It seems like such an absurd number, but I love statistics like that because it really highlights how absurd the issue is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, does anybody have any questions? You can get off, you can like unmute and ask the question. You can put it in the chat, whichever you prefer. But yeah, I think you had a ton of great information and insight.
I can start with something. It's not necessarily a question, but more of an observation. So you're seeing, it starts at the beach where you see maybe the garbage starting to accumulate, but then you even can look in your own backyard, or your neighbors, like, if you're walking around your neighborhood or something like that, and things start calling out to you. The more that you do this type of work, you just see that, this trash problem is just everywhere, and we can't solve it all in one day. Like you said, there will be windy days where people's garbage gets knocked over. It's nobody's fault necessarily, or there will be things like that at the beach too, But getting together like this, getting organized and doing an actual call to action of going to the beach and cleaning it up, it makes a difference. It really does. And, it even got me thinking, oh, maybe for my birthday this year, I'll do a beach cleanup too, and spend this amount of time at the beach, things like that. Because summer birthdays, you want to see the beach clean. But just in general, it's a great concept, and I think it's going to be great this weekend. So if anyone can make it, I really suggest it.
A question that I have, Joe, is if people want to do beach cleanups on their own, right? Like maybe they can't come this Sunday, but they
Mhm.
want to do it on their own. What do you suggest for them for disposing of the trash?
The trash that they find when they go
Yeah.
out and clean
Mhm.
themselves. Yeah, that's a really good question. That's actually ironically something that I'll probably talk about as we do the beach cleanup on Sunday for that reason, because it's not always clear, and I think there's different answers depending upon what you're finding. And it sort of depends. I mean, the trash that you find kind of dictates what you do with it ultimately. So I've been in environments where, weirdly enough, there's a lot of cans and bottles, and you can actually recycle a fair amount of it. And then I've done other beach cleans where there's pretty much none of that. It's all these scraps that basically you're just trying to remove from these marine environments and, unfortunately toss in a landfill, which again, like I said, in terms of larger scale solutions, well, now we have a landfill issue, right? Like, and even recycling, there's issues with that, of course. So it's sort of hard to say on a case by case basis, but that's one thing that you can try to do is try to identify, like, okay, well, what types of trash am I finding in terms of the disposal options, right? You could conceivably, again, I mean, I've gone to the beach to clean up, and there's a ton of stuff that you could actually compost maybe. So a lot of times I say it's a good idea to have separate bags like available or containers or whatever, so that you can have some if you want to do, or if you find stuff that's able to be recycled, or stuff that you could compost versus just throw out, those sorts of things. And the one thing I do advise as well, I do caution, do be careful though if you're going out on your own. It sounds like something that shouldn't need a disclaimer. Well, I'm just going to do something good to help the beach, but my rule personally is that if I don't recognize something, I probably don't touch it, because again, you're not going to get everything, and you do want to be careful doing things like reaching your hand into certain brush or reeds or something like that, or stepping in certain areas where there might be a lot of ticks or something like that. One of my mottos is live to clean another day, right? Which is, I think, actually a really good one. And I've seen it. I've seen on beaches, unfortunately, I've seen it everywhere. But things like needles, and that's obviously something, you don't want to be reaching in for something like that, or like a metal hook or something like that. So I think you just want to be careful. Like, you want to be prepared. You want to be a little bit cautious in that sense. But it's like all the more reason why this is something that needs to be addressed, right? Because this is not stuff you want on the beach or environments too. So I will collect some of that stuff, but only if I feel sort of super prepared. So if you're uncomfortable, and again, unfortunately, I see all the time, again, for example, I'll see bottles or cans or whatever in these tall grasses or something like that. And by this point in the season, I don't even go near it, because I know that the tick situation, if I get knocked out with Lyme's disease, that's a much more detrimental effect for me being able to go out and clean more than if I just say, hey, there's other stuff I can do and do work with now, and maybe I'll get that in the winter once it's frozen. And that's actually exactly what I do. I'll go in those environments that same trash will be there 6 months later in the dead of winter, and I can get it then, unfortunately, sometimes. So there's some logistical, I think, considerations like that to sort of keep in mind. But in general, I think those are kind of the main ones to sort of have on your radar in general. Yeah.
And if you do find some garbage, let's say, like you said, broken glass or something that you don't want to touch, hooks or anything, fishermen's hooks especially, because you see that across, a lot of our major beaches. Do you think you should call the beach staff to take care of it, or that's probably
You absolutely could, yeah. If you're at like a particularly like frequented public beach or something like that,
Mhm.
that's definitely, that's always an interesting consideration too, because it depends, I think, on like what exactly you're finding, and where and when in different ways. A lot of people, they carry around. I need to start doing this, like sharps containers, especially if they find needles or other objects like that are particularly hazardous and they still want to pick them up. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's wrong to ask the people manning the local beach if they have materials or things to help pick that up with. But that's also why I myself always use a trash picker. I actually prefer the trash picker over gloves, and you actually get like really adept at it. I call it my robot hand. I'm ready for when the robots take over, because I've been working with claws for many years now. So I'm very dexterous with it. So that's kind of how I remove them. I also keep a pocket knife or a multi-tool on me. So the way I remove hooks and wires and stuff is I actually usually cut around them, and I'll actually cut the wires to pull them out. You can remove them much more easily that way. That's a good, just very specific, practical, tangible piece of advice. If you do find hooks or wires that you do feel comfortable removing, don't pull on them. If you come prepared with something like, again, I have a multi-tool, it's just a little scissor, you can cut right around them and just kind of pluck them out then. So there's little things that you can do like that, yeah. But I think to your question, asking staff if they can do something with it too, that's especially if it's something particularly hazardous, like you're finding needles or something like that, they likely might have something to dispose of that, yeah.
Great. Anybody have any other questions? If not, we'll jump into some updates.
I know I did see that we have a chat. Claire Brazel said before she left, great work, Joe. I love your passion. I don't have any questions as we have many beach cleanups in our area. And I know that Claire is around, I believe, Port Washington. So good for them. I'm happy to hear that.
Nobody wants to know the weirdest thing I've ever found beach cleaning?
I do.
Yeah, I do.
Yes. Tell us.
I mean, pretty much anything you can think of. I'm pretty sure, I forget where it was, but I found like part of a piano once. That was weird.
Oh.
Yeah, like literally, you can add musical instruments to the check again,
Like
to the bingo card.
keys or like the body of a
Like the
piano?
body, like part of the body. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the weird thing too. You find almost, so this is something else I've done that's really interesting, is I've started in some places digging because I'm just curious. And it's almost like becoming a historical record where you can dig down and find stuff from 20, 30, 40 years ago now, which is really strange.
Wow.
So there's, yeah, literally you can find anything now from over the decades that, again, if nobody gets to it and it just gets covered up, it's going to take forever, ostensibly, to degrade. So yeah, there's again a few other things that I haven't found. Like I've found some weapons, but I haven't found like a gun or anything like that. But a lot of people have, so I sort of feel shortchanged because I'm like, oh, I only ever find knives and nunchucks and stuff, like, you know. But that's still plenty weird on its own.
And
Yeah.
the piano.
And the
I can't
piano,
get
yeah.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm interested in, the stories of like, how does this stuff get here? And again, I think some of it's dumping, some of it's litter. I think a lot of it is storm runoff in different ways. And again, like Francesco was saying, that's not necessarily like anybody's fault. It's, again, it can be as simple as raccoon knocks over the garbage can because it's hungry, tears it up, rain comes by, leads to the stream. I mean, look at your storm drains in your local neighborhood. A lot of them now say right on them explicitly, leads to ocean. And then you can see like a bottle falling into it. And it's like, okay, that's all interconnected in different ways. So the interconnectedness of it all, again, is, I think, really something just to highlight more and more, and think about how all of that does tie together in these different ways. Yeah.
That's
Now,
great.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are you planning, or would you ever consider to display all of these crazy things you found, like in an exhibit or like I don't know, a statement piece?
Oh yeah, I actually have done that multiple times. I had an idea once to like do a crazy beach clean and then just dump it all in one place as kind of a statement, and be like, oh look, what if somebody just did this? We would all be outraged, right? If somebody just dumped 1,000 pounds of plastic waste just in one spot on the beach, why aren't we outraged that it's just spread out, you know? So I thought about that, but that would probably get me in trouble. So when I'm ready to do that, maybe I'll do that. But I've done different actual pieces at exhibitions, exhibitions. So I think I mentioned I did that trash wave. It was like a 12-foot wave. We used like just like a mesh metal frame and all types of just probably like 1,000 or thousands of pieces of different types of plastic making up the wave. And then we talked about, the stories of some of these pieces and a lot of what I talked about today with it. Another time I did a plastic tower. I made it look like a building, and it was just full of all these different types of pieces from just a local beach, and talked exactly about that as well, how that all sort of gets there in different ways, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think the art aspect of it is really interesting, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of interesting work with it. Actually, tomorrow night I'm doing a reading from an essay of mine with the Stony Brook Environmental Club, and we're pairing it with I forget exactly how they're characterizing it, but it's recycled art session. So they're using all this recycled materials to do these art designs or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of people doing a lot of interesting things, and my contribution as a writer is more so like I'm just going to put a bunch of trash together in some creative way, but and I let the words do more of the expression for me. But yeah, I love doing stuff like that. To actually see it and actually show it, I think is really impactful. And I think if that's something again that you're into, just start to look at other people, the work that they're doing with it. It's unbelievable, some of the art that is generated in this way to try to highlight some of this. Yeah.
That's great to hear. I love how expressive, this field can be. It's all interconnected, like you said, whether it's, just noticing what's around you and the problems, seeing the broken feedback loops in our society at times. And I'm grateful for your contributions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the beach cleanup as well.
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to go through with some updates, and Rebecca, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been mentioning this beach cleanup a lot, but haven't given any information. So here's the information. On Sunday, April 27th at 11 a.m., we'll be at Robert Moses Beach at Field 4 doing this beach cleanup. I put the link in the chat to register. So yeah, the goal is to just go out there with a bunch of us that have been newly educated or maybe are veterans to this. Bring your friends, bring your family, your coworkers, whoever you want. And we're gonna see what we find at the beach. And Joe's been saying that he'll help us out, give us some tips along the way, which is exciting. So yeah, just remember to bring either gloves or the grabbers if you have some reusable bags or buckets, and then we're gonna sort it all out and see like, are we gonna recycle it? Are we gonna divert it to landfills? Do we compost it? What do we do with it? Reusable water bottle just in case you get thirsty out there. And appropriate clothing, appropriate shoes. We will be on the beach, so make sure you're comfy out there. And then lastly, they are charging for cars now. So they started like April 9th or April 15th or something. So it's $8 per car. So if you know multiple people going, try to carpool so you don't have to pay all that. Or use the Empire Pass if you have that. But I will be there, Francesca will be there, Joe will be there. And yeah, it'll be super fun.
Can't wait. All right. So some other updates for LIAC. I recently did a presentation at the New York State Organic Summit, and here's just a little recap. It was really collaborative. It was a great, enriching experience. I had a lot of thoughtful conversations and discussions with people on possible solutions in policy, and then, all different speakers who gave great presentations on their perspectives, especially on successful programs from our neighbors in Vermont. I really appreciated hearing a wide range of those perspectives across the composting spectrum. So from community-based efforts to municipal programs, college campuses, haulers, and large-scale commercial operations. So initial points I wanted to mention is the New York State food scrap recycling law has been recently updated and amended. So the tonnage changes will be in effect as of 2027. So I believe it goes from if a business is within 25 miles of a food scrap recycling facility to 50 miles of a food scrap recycling facility. So this will impact more businesses who are, closer to Nassau County, perhaps. And as of right now, I believe there's a little over 1,000 generators. That's how we refer to them. And there is a way to opt out of the program as a business, but only if you are without access to one of those facilities, and the opportunities are going to increase over time, and the tonnage per week that you generate is going to decrease. So right now, if you're doing 2 tons per week and you're within 25 miles of a facility, you're required to comply. So additionally, there's a possible increase in state funding for organics from $2 million to $6 million. So I have a call to action to follow up from this video for everyone to send to our lawmakers to say, hey, we should have more funding towards organics efforts across the state. All right. Otherwise, we have Compost Awareness Week coming up from May 4th to May 10th. And our theme is Sustainable Communities Begin with Compost. This will be a week-long initiative focused on raising awareness about the benefits of composting and using compost. And we have some upcoming events, which we will highlight in our newsletters and social media. Otherwise, we have a speaker series, and you're part of it right now. So do you know anyone who wants to do a bi-monthly event? Please share your expertise on all things organics and sustainability during our bi-monthly events. We're looking for creative thinkers, advocates, and beyond to share about your passion. You can fill out this Google form here at the QR code. You can scan it now or at the recording, and you can email us with any questions. All right. So our grant opportunities for the month, we have here the ESD, which is the Empire State, so New York State, essentially, Business Food Waste Mitigation Grant Program. And the amount for the grant is $100,000 to $750,000 per award. They have a $4 million total for this program. And it's focused on connections between municipalities or nonprofits and business. So you can just be a municipality, but they want to see that your focus is on reducing business-generated food waste by they're providing grants for equipment to expand organics recycling facilities, and also looking into byproducts that you can create from those organics. So that deadline is May 23rd, 2025 at 4 p.m. And there's also a new database of federal grants to support food waste initiatives from ReFed, and that's in partnership with the NRDC. And they've developed a database of federal funding opportunities that support food waste reduction and organics recycling initiatives. And this database now includes basic information on grants, eligible applications, the due dates, funding amounts, and links to more information. And I've checked out this tool, and it is very helpful and very expansive on what they can do. I really do like ReFed. All right, does anyone else have any updates to share? If not, we'll go ahead and talk about joining our team if you're interested. So if you're interested in the opportunity to work with us, please let us know. We're looking for new members as we expand, and there are many grant projects to come. You can write in the chat or email us at liorganicscouncil@gmail.com if you'd like to be a part of our team. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to Joe, and we really look forward to seeing you all at that beach cleanup this weekend. All right.